Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use, even just a simple thumbs up on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, if you want to subscribe at IEN Magazine, you can join us live every Thursday when we go live around 2 p.m. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Jeff, welcome back.
Good to be here.
Yeah?
It was honestly great to be gone, but it is good to be back.
Great to be gone, good to be back.
Yes.
I like that. Well, it was great you were gone, but it's good you're back.
The audience shares your collective moan.
Anna, how are you doing today?
Doing great.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
You like how I tried to mix up the intro just slightly and then completely pause dead? That was good. It's like any change in my life, and that's where I'm at now, just complete standstill.
It's muscle memory. I understand.
All right. Well, before we get started with our first story this week, we have a word from our sponsor, Weavix.
Hey, Sean, can you swing by my office after your shift, please?
10-4, copy that.
Hey, we're back. Did you know that Weavix is the leader in frontline communication, offering push-to-talk multimedia capabilities and AI-powered language translation that empowers the frontline through a Walt Smart Radio? Now, Weavix is the first to introduce safety-compliant music, breaking the monotony of everyday work. Always ensure that you have the ear of the worker while enhancing worker safety and connectivity. Explore how Weavix is transforming frontline operations at Weavix.com. Our first story this week. Boeing Subsidiary's new X-plane sprints to next design phase. Aurora Flight Sciences, a Boeing subsidiary, recently completed the conceptual design review for a new high-speed X-plane. The new aircraft can lift off vertically and, so far, the development has been quite a success. Such a success that the project has been selected to continue work on a preliminary design review. The X-plane is being developed for DARPA's Sprint program, which aims to design, build, and fly an aircraft that is fast and doesn't rely on a runway for takeoff or landing. So, a fast VTOL. Aurora's concept is a low-drag, fan-in-wing demonstrator that integrates a blended wing body platform, combining the agility of a VTOL with unprecedented speed. The blended wing platform can reach a 450-knot cruise speed, and embedded lift fans have integrated covers that enable a smooth transition from vertical to horizontal flight. The aircraft isn't just a VTOL, it can also perform short takeoff and vertical landings. So, an STOL, super short takeoff and landings, so a STOL, and conventional takeoff and landings. Aurora expects the preliminary design review to be completed in 12 months, with the first flight coming within 3 years. First, we need to think that we can do it, Jeff. Then we need to prove that we can do it. And then we need to do it bigger, faster, stronger, and smarter, right?
Well, we also need to know why we're doing it.
Okay.
That's the one thing we kind of left out there.
You're struggling with the why?
Yeah, a little bit here. I understand we've been talking about these VTOLs for a while, and I understand some of the applications we've discussed in the past because they've been like commuter options, essentially. You know, lessen the congestion on the roadways. But now we're doing these, and the concept reminds me more of a drone than a passenger aircraft, if you will. So it just makes me wonder where we're going here. We have helicopters, okay, that can do the vertical takeoff and landing. And the helicopters that we have now, they're not going 450 knots, which is like over 500 miles an hour, but they can go like 250 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So we do have some speed there. We do have this capability. What are we trying to do? Because if we're trying to have a faster passenger aircraft, but then we're not testing them with people, where are we going? Like, I'm just confused as to what the end game is here. I understand the functionality and the benefits of being able to do vertical takeoffs and landings without a big landing strip, but is this for goods? Is this for people? Is this transportation? Is this logistics? I would like a little more depth as far as where we're going. And I think this is one of the few instances where I've seen DARPA attached to a project where those questions were raised. Yeah. Usually I'm a big proponent of everything that they're doing here, but I guess it's just not clear to me. And I guess I'd like a little more clarity if we're looking at a concept vehicle within the next 12 months and then flight, like having it really performing for real in 3.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what we're hauling and where we're going and what the plan is. So that was a little bit of my hang up. The other thing is, man, I know it's a subsidiary of Boeing, but they got a lot of other things that they might want to funnel resources into right now as well. So yeah, it just needs more clarity for me to get real excited about it.
Well, that's one thing. I guess normally DARPA and Aurora are much more straightforward in terms of the applications. Yeah. And I think that while we think about the long term of a VTOL potentially having a passenger impact, this is strictly, military applications where you need to take off quickly and get out of there faster. So, when you're talking about more than 2.5 times as fast as a helicopter, that's, that could save lives.
The concern there is the last memory we have of that type of aircraft is the Osprey.
Yeah.
And all of the incidents and all the safety acts, fatalities and everything else that was involved there was when it was in that VTOL mode. Not when it was in the plane mode, but in the vertical takeoff or landing. So again, that's where I was thrown back to, and I understand why you didn't want to put people in there to test it because we've had all these struggles, but we have a working mechanism with a helicopter. Is it really worth all the energy we're putting into it, I guess?
Yeah. Well, and talking about it being uncrewed, that was one thing that really stood out to me was that, it's crazy that it's easier to make an uncrewed X-plane just because it cuts out all the safety requirements that you need for those silly humans. And in reality, it makes testing easier, less risky, and it could be they said it could be easily translated to crewed aircraft. Aurora has this other program called the Centaur program where they do the exact same thing, where they basically fly tests uncrewed, sometimes still with a pilot actually in it, but it's still technically uncrewed. I think just because it helps get to testing faster. It's like a time to market savings. Also, I think this could be crazy in search and rescue stuff as well, where you got to kind of get out of there as quick as possible. Anna, what were your thoughts on the latest X-plane from Aurora?
Yeah, I don't know a ton about this, so I looked to some other sources out there to see, to Jeff's point, like what is the case for this? Breaking Defense added some interesting color to this, saying that whatever comes of the Sprint program could take on even more importance following the Army's decision to cancel the Future Attack Reconnaissance Helicopter program. They say that leaves operators like Special Forces to rely on legacy platforms. So maybe they're trying to fill a gap there with this, I guess. The other thing they pointed to, of course, is like areas like in Indo-Pacific where there's hardly any runways anywhere. So just being able to apply some flexibility to some of those more remote regions, again, we get that, right? It just doesn't achieve a need that is significant enough to justify the cost and the development time, all that. I don't know. I think you raise a great point about Boeing. To me, when I saw this, like we do know that like Boeing has a lot of irons in the fire right now. I know it's a subsidiary. This is kind of that subsidiary's wheelhouse. So you can get it on the one hand. I also think it does. They talked about leaning on existing engine solutions to shorten that development risk. And then the timelines as well. I think that's an important point here. We talked in the past about Boeing and how they were making a concerted effort to kind of de-risk their defense contracts after what had happened with Air Force One and those cost overruns and the timelines and just being such a disaster for them. Now they're trying to work really hard to make sure that they don't say yes to deals that put them on the hook for, maybe not being set up to fail in some of these. And I think they must see this as being more viable because they have some of that technology in place, and maybe we'll see more of this type of approach from Boeing, where they're relying on existing platforms or designs to try to cut some of that time out and maybe de-risk a little bit. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, like, in a year what we see from this, like what's actually happening in a year. 12-month timeline, correct?
Yeah, 12-month timeline, and then within 3 years, the potential actual flight tests. Jeff, talking about de-risking yourself from a situation, do you think, when Aurora Flight Sciences, when they know that they're going to hear their name, they're going to hear it before or after Boeing Subsidiary or a Boeing Subsidiary? Is that, problematic? It's got to be difficult when, you're kind of bought up by this huge multinational plane maker that you think is going to do nothing but great things for your business. And then it becomes maybe a bit of a reputational risk.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, either way, they're tied to them. There's no way around that. So I think you embrace it.
Yeah.
And I think what you're able to do is say, we are a subsidiary, so we still do our own thing, but we are able to capitalize on the resources they bring to the table. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily at this point would you brag about the culture that Boeing brings to the table.
No, you would not.
Or their recent track record from a safety perspective. But you can still point to, and I don't think anybody would argue with the technological resources that you would have at your disposal, and as well as the connections to the DoD and all of that. So I think you kind of pick and choose your connection points there.
Yeah, supply chain connections, great digital advanced manufacturing resources. That's it, though.
QA, that's us. Yeah. Totally by ourselves.
That's all.
Yeah, we'll do that. Thanks, guys. Don't worry about it.
All right. Our next most popular story this week, Toyota shows an engine reborn with green fuel despite global push for EVs. Toyota is putting a futuristic spin on the traditional internal combustion engine. The company called it, quote, an engine reborn when announcing a new, lean, compact engine that can be used in hybrids. But also, it can run on green fuels like hydrogen and bioethanol. While other car manufacturers are trying to go fully electric, Toyota seems to be relying on its strengths in the hybrid market. Still, in a statement, Toyota's chief executive, Koji Sato, said the, quote, engine is optimized for the electrification era. But in the interim, we still have hybrids. But the ones that are going to rely on electric motors more than gas. This new engine is going to take a lesser role and help the electric motor along. Anna, is there a market for Toyota's engine reborn?
I think maybe. Right now, there's a ton of talk about hybrids again. Hybrids are like having a moment. Plug-in hybrids are having a moment. People are saying like, oh, the market's not responding to EVs fully. And then the automakers are saying, well, that's cool. We'll just build more hybrids. They want the safety and security of having that engine as a backup. I think that the narrative around the EV market right now is a little bit muddy. And I think there's a little bit of drama that's not actually reflected in the data. And I say that because, if you look at, you hear this about a slumping e-market. And plug-in hybrids have grown a lot. Between 22 and 23, they grew 48% in sales. They hit a record high in 2023. People like them, right? But electric cars, full electric cars also accounted for 18% of all cars sold globally in 23, which is up from 2% in 2018. So in 5 years, that grew by 16 points. Mm-hmm. Like that is incredible. And if you think about any company to see that type of growth in any category in that time period, that's pretty amazing. So Bloomberg recently published a report on this topic. They laid out some data that says instead of looking at this as a dying industry, it's much more likely that we're instead looking at an adolescent industry on the verge of its next growth spurt, which I think we've kind of been saying that all along. Mm-hmm. But if you look at how sales from the first quarter of 2024 compared to the same last year, yes, Tesla and GM took a step back, but Hyundai's EV sales were up 56%. Like Fords were up, Rivians were up, Mercedes were up by like significant double-digit figures. So even Toyota's EV sales were up. Mm-hmm. And so they say that part of that problem is that Tesla is actually dragging that the numbers down kind of for everybody. So, and really, we know the reasons for that. Teslas are becoming less popular. Been a lot of issues with lawsuit safety, a lot of issues with pricing, not to mention that Tesla hasn't put out a new model in a couple of years. They have the Cybertruck, which we all know doesn't really count. Yeah. But they're really not stepping up to the game in terms of what the competitive nature of the market is right now. And as GM's Mary Barra recently told reporters, the EV market was overhyped and now it's probably underhyped, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. And I agree with that. Mm-hmm. And I think also what lies in the middle is the solution to the auto problem around climate. And I think you're going to see some automakers roll the dice and explore some things that sort of straddle the line. And that's what we're seeing from Toyota here. I think we should expect that from them. They've always been the ones that are like more out on their own with hydrogen. When other companies were like all in on electric, Toyota's like, well, we're going to put some eggs in different baskets and see what we can figure out here. I think it makes sense that they're trying to explore this. And I think it makes sense, too, that people are looking at the internal combustion engine and trying to find a way to make that more efficient. If that's going to be a sticking point for so many buyers, then, yeah, by all means, put some R&D into figuring that out if that's what's going to work. But in the meantime, I know he's saying, like, this is a long game. And I agree that it is, but not too long, please. I mean, I don't think we have too long.
Well, is part of the problem are, like, impatient culture that demands immediacy? Like, it was like, okay, this is the EV revolution. Here are your EVs. Why aren't you buying any? EVs are dead. I just feel like, these trends are happening at a speed that just doesn't match traditional industry and how long it takes for these industries to scale. Right.
I agree. I mean, and that's to the point around, like, this is not a dying industry. It's an industry like kind of moving between stages. And I think that is absolutely true. And it is weird, the narrative that we're getting right now, which is automakers that can't sell these. They have like a huge glut of, Tesla does have a pretty big glut, but a lot of the other automakers do not.
Yeah. It's surprising to me, but I think that's where this is a good play, right? And I don't know, Jeff, do you agree? Is there a market for this sort of new hybrid model of engine where, it doesn't rely as much on the ICE engine? It relies more on the electric motor, but, still has this little tiny baby ICE engine on the side to help her along?
I think there's different types of consumers that are going to look at that differently. Everybody's going to look at that because there are some who are going to look at a hybrid as not the ultimate solution. That's not what they want to do. Almost like a bailout or whatever you want to say. So
hedging.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the short-term answer is yes. Okay, because if that's what's available to them, that's where they're going to go. If they're not completely in on an electric vehicle and they have the hybrid option, that'd be the first place they go as opposed to going fully electric. So having different options out there has always been a good idea for every type of product, including vehicles. Yeah. I think the biggest issue that we saw with the EVs, it was forecasting. I don't think they always really knew what to do there. Yeah. And they were incentivized by the government and by in a lot of different ways to put out as many of these as they could. They didn't sell as many because, as Anna fully illustrated there, it's a different buying cycle. I think we've gone through, I've always seen the 5 different tiers of buyers or influencers. You've got the innovators who are on it right away, the early adapters, and then you've got where I think we are right now with EVs, which is sort of the early and the late majority before we get to the laggards. Okay. Yeah. And that is where we are right now because all those people who are excited about getting an EV did it. Yeah. Now everybody is like me saying, my next vehicle. Yeah. Maybe, but I'm not there yet. Yeah. So I think that's where that resides. I think when we talk about this new engine, the new engine that they're bringing out, the engine Reborn from Toyota, it's exciting to talk about hydrogen. It's exciting to talk about bioethanol. We haven't talked about that in a long time. Yeah. And that's been around forever. But I think there needs to be more conversation about the energy infrastructure supporting those methods and those approaches, because we all know about hydrogen. We've talked about it a lot on the podcast in terms of the benefits, but also the challenges from a production and a scalability perspective. We don't have hydrogen dispensing stations all over the place. Yeah. So it's great to talk about developing that technology as an engine from a transportation perspective. But if we can't get the fuel, that doesn't really matter. And with bioethanol, it's sort of run a course where you're either in or you're out. A lot of people look at it and they still struggle with the fact that it doesn't give you as much power. It doesn't let the engine run at an optimal level, and you have to refill. So it doesn't get the same MPGs as a regular gasoline fuel does. So it's also sort of combating that. So to see those two things sort of championed over in this 3-hour presentation that they did here, great, but I want to see more. I want to see stuff like when we see General Motors investing in a lithium processing refinery. Tesla's done the same thing. We've also seen a lot of the OEs investing in a lot of these rare earth minerals that they need to produce electric batteries. So where's that part of it? And that's where I think Toyota is still hedging big time. I think they're not sold on any one of these platforms, whether it's the battery electric, hydrogen, whatever the case is. So they're saying, we can do it all. And you guys figure it out and tell us what you want. So it'll be interesting to see how the consumer responds to that. But in this instance, I think the consumer needs to be told what they want.
No, that's
what's out there.
That's a good call. But I mean, this is a good sort of Homer Simpson engine fit to the infrastructure problem, right? Where it's like, if we have an issue with infrastructure not being fully realized for EVs, bioethanol, hydrogen, maybe if we had all these disparate structures, maybe this hybrid engine could be the bridge, potentially. And when you talk about all the other things that automakers are doing, like GM investing in new lithium processes, I think where Toyota's going with that is the collaboration. Because they're working with Subaru and Mazda on more ecological engines as part of this, what they were calling a, quote, multi-pathway workshop. Toyota's chief said, each company wants to win, but we can be faster if we work together. I think that's a very good play, just in terms of like, hey, we have 3 serious automakers here all working together to try and come up with a better engine. Again, one thing that you talk about with the 3-hour presentation, not a lot of details on the engine. Like, hey, we have the engine Reborn. That's all we're going to say about it,
Because none of this stuff is new. It's just new for them to tout it this heavily.
Well, and so they also raised a lot of points we hear all the time, right? Like in terms of the big kind of like huge changes that we're talking globally, not just in energy and infrastructure, but jobs. Toyota mentioned how 5.5 million jobs are at stake in the overall Japanese supply chain if there was a sudden shift to EVs. So it's just not economically possible or socially responsible, according to Toyota.
Right. That's according to Toyota. I think some tricky math there.
Some tricky math.
Well, David's got the beautiful mind for all that, so he knows how all this works. He's got this all figured out.
I figured out the math while we were talking about it.
What's the plus or minus on that, or the accuracy of that?
16%.
Well done.
Another thing that was that stood out to me too is that there are still people like Takahiro Fujimoto, the professor of business at Waseda University. He says that EVs are a key solution for reducing emissions, but, he does talk about the large emissions that still go into making the batteries. And, he says that if we're really going to answer these problems, we need to rely on we need to really look at mass transportation again, like mass transit, talking about trains and stuff like that. And I think that it's important to have people like that saying like, hey, okay, this is still like not really solving the big problem in terms of what we need to look at it in terms of a transition in transportation and a changing in habits.
Okay, but the U.S. is way too big for trains to solve our problem.
No, I mean, not solve it, but like be a part of it.
And also, if people won't drive electric cars, they're not like...
Get on a bus.
No,
I mean, not yet, but like overall, like, I mean, we've talked about it multiple times on the podcast where like, ideally, it would be greater investment in improved mass transit infrastructure.
Okay, then the real answer is walking. There's no emissions.
Yeah, that's why we got to just go back to everyone working from home. Everyone works from home. Nobody drives. Emissions gone.
Right, exactly.
Okay, then we don't need the trains. We don't need this engine Reborn.
Nope, none
Everyone
of it.
stay home and do nothing.
You're really gonna lose the 5.5 million jobs there, but.
All right, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, yep.
It's a work in progress. All right, our next most popular story this week. Campbell's to close plants, cut 415 jobs. Campbell's, also known as Big Soup, is making some big cuts to eliminate, quote, inefficient sites. This includes a plant in Tualatin, I believe that's right, Tualatin, Oregon. Nailed it. Which Campbell's acquired in the Pacific Foods acquisition in 2017. The 250,000 square foot operation will be shuttered in phases, finally closing the doors by 2026. The plant currently has some 330 workers, and about 120 of them are going to lose their jobs in August. Campbell says the plant is, quote, aging and inefficient and can't support increased consumer demand. Production is going to be shifted to other plants as well as to co-manufacturing partners. In another blow, Campbell's is downsizing a factory in Jeffersonville, Indiana. The site is going to start, quote, specializing this summer, focusing on the company's late July brand of tortilla chips, but cutting other products. The downsizing is going to impact more than a third of the plant's 230 employees. All told, Campbell's is cutting around 415 workers. Campbell's said it was, quote, difficult news, but did note growth in other facilities, including Maxton, North Carolina, Hanover, Pennsylvania, Franklin, Wisconsin, and Richmond, Utah. Big cuts, but both at facilities that came into the fold as part of an acquisition. Anna, is this just what happens after things finally shake out, after a company is finally brought into the fold and you kind of realize maybe the assets you need and don't need afterwards?
Well, certainly. I think it's probably hard to swallow, though, for those workers in Oregon because, as you said, this was an acquisition. Campbell's bought Pacific Foods in 2017. And in many ways, it was sort of a bolt-on at that time, or what seemed like that. The company was founded in Tualatin in 1987. So 30 years later, when Campbell's bought it, they plan to continue to operate there with the existing staff. It was an organic certified plant. And at the time, Campbell said that it wanted to invest in accelerating the growth of Pacific Foods with its resources. It hoped to expand distribution, boost marketing support for brand building, and invest in R&D. So you can imagine if you're a legacy Pacific employee, this is tantamount, I think, to seeing the company that you built kind of being dismantled because this is where it started. And now it's being, its parts are being absorbed by other production entities, including, basically like co-manufacturing facilities, not even Campbell's plants. Yeah. So obviously the products still exist, but the foundation of where that brand was built is being scrapped. And so on the one hand, you can look at this like streamlining among a large network of Campbell's facilities, but this one I think was a bit distinct. And without a statement from any local officials or the community or the mayor or anything, which I was unable to find, it's hard to know if this was like a devastating turn for this community or if there was writing on the wall. Because on the one hand, it's a lot of jobs, but also consider that there was, according to Campbell's press release, when they bought Pacific Foods, there's 540 workers there. Now there's like 300. So they already like 200 workers down. You wonder if people there were feeling like the thrust of that and that they were going in that direction of wanting to ultimately move on to another place. I don't know. I guess the only saving grace that I could see here is that Tualatin is Portland metro area. So I'm assuming that there are a lot of opportunities around there for jobs, hopefully. But yeah, you can see that these displaced workers, especially for the batch that's getting let go already in August, that's quick. That's quick. So some I think are sticking around till 26, they said, is the last phase. But yeah, not great for those folks that kind of grew up with the Pacific brand and now are seeing that the headquarters of that brand be put out to pasture, I guess. I don't know how else to say it, but
no, it's true. But I mean, like, it's unfortunately the harsh reality of any acquisition. And as you said, like if they're already down 200 plus employees, that might be something that internally they were already feeling. Maybe. And this might have just been hey, when's it going to happen? Hopefully there was a little bit more communication just in terms of what the long-term plans were for people. Jeff, one part that I wanted to pull out is that when they say leaning on co-manufacturing partners, I mean, that just is a funny way of saying outsourcing.
Well, contract manufacturers, I think outsourcing has a different connotation to it. When you're working with somebody who specializes in a particular product group, that doesn't give the same, I guess, feeling like you're going with just a low-cost provider, easy way to do it. You're going to somebody who has an expertise in this, who, yes, will do it more efficiently and cost-effectively than doing it in-house, but you're not losing anything per se.
That's contract manufacturing washing.
What?
Contract manufacturing washing.
Yeah.
You said that really fast. It kind of threw me like, what?
I had to get out of my brain right away. Otherwise she'd be gone.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I can appreciate what you're saying there. I think what this really came down to is we get into these situations where there's just a reality of the dynamic, and like Anna alluded to, there's already been some folks that have been let go. When they describe this sort of campus, this enterprise, it's a lot of separate buildings. Okay. So I think when you were Pacific Foods and you were doing things in smaller batches, that was definitely amenable and made sense. Now you're Campbell's, and it's done at a much larger scale. And so you could see a lot of things trying to implement automation and different robotic packaging and everything else that would make that very difficult, especially when you're talking about a canning operation. It kind of made sense when you described the working dynamic. And the fact that Campbell's isn't eliminating these positions, the unfortunate thing is they're just eliminating them from this facility and this geography. They are going other places. So it's just tough. Sometimes in manufacturing, you do have to balance what you'd want to do. Again, this facility had been in the community for over 30 years. I mean, it's kind of been a staple for them. And it's too bad to see it go, but you can also appreciate where Campbell's is coming from.
Yeah. And it's not, I mean, some jobs, like about 200 roles are going to be gone for good. But I will say, I mean, and it was just checking it out on Google Earth, but it definitely, we've been in those facilities, right? Where like, it's a legacy manufacturing operation. They've been in that building for sometimes up to 100 years, and they've just grown as much as they possibly can in that footprint without tearing it down. And I mean, we see those in the best case scenarios where they buy the property across the street and they're able to kind of to build their dream facility nearby or whatever. And that just didn't seem like it was in the cards here. And when you do look at this facility, it doesn't, I don't know how it was built, whether or not it was built in stages or whatnot, but it definitely looks like, an older manufacturing operation, that maybe has some flaws.
Well, and they also didn't own it. All the buildings were leased, and I think that's probably that could have been another major part of the challenge that they didn't go into.
Okay. I also wanted to note that Pacific Foods, just a terrific soup.
They have so many good soups.
Just a terrific soup. I really enjoy it.
And Jeff, it's not a canning operation. They are in
it's a boxing operation.
boxes. Yeah.
Yeah.
My bad.
But you should try them if you haven't. Very good soup.
Very specific soup box.
Okay.
Now, not to get up on my soup box or anything here, but I do want to say that while they are shutting one plant and cutting staff at another, the company is investing $230 million in new projects through 2026. It's going to create new jobs, like they mentioned, in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Franklin. And I just wanted to note those in particular, just because there is a little bit of good that is coming with this. It's not just
trade-off,
straight cost cutting. In Maxton, North Carolina, they're investing $150 million to add a new aseptic food soup production, and that's going to create 100 new jobs in North Carolina. Hanover, Pennsylvania is getting a $72 million investment for new potato chip kettles.
What?
Which I'm personally excited about.
They actually cook those in kettles?
I mean, yeah. It would be weird to buy potato chip kettles and then make soup in them.
No, you're like a soup expert.
That's what's behind the Pacific Foods flavor of soup, is that it's actually made in potato chip kettles.
David is big soup.
He's big soup.
I'm angling for a roll in big soup. I just want a piece of that. That's going to create 72 new roles in Hanover, Pennsylvania. And then Franklin, Wisconsin, a smaller investment, only $8 million, but that's going to expand tortilla chip capacity and add 40 new roles. So you kind of see where some of that's getting piecemealed to different locations. The company also previously announced expanded goldfish cracker production in Richmond, Utah. And I mean, I know that I'm certainly contributing to this demand, but they need to increase the bakery's output by 50% and add 80 new goldfish jobs. That is, man, just like all of the cushions in America right now are just so sad to hear that. Like every crease and crevasse in family households is just going, not more. Not more. The world doesn't need more.
Hey, I got to ask you, what do you think of this term specializing in like we're eliminating product lines and jobs in this facility, specializing? I mean, I know it's technically accurate.
Yeah.
It's a very nice spin on.
Oh, that's some good spin doctoring.
Yeah.
No. We're not downsizing. We're specializing on just 1/3 of the business. No, that's I'm a sucker for the
I know.
the business jargon. We're just like, whoa. No one said downsizing. No one said outsourcing. We're co-manufacturing and we're specializing.
There will be
easy.
There will be a loss of jobs, but
True. All right, so they have an opportunity to specialize in other things. Also, just a side note. Has every person ever with the last name Campbell been nicknamed Soup? I just feel like there are thousands of them out there. Like everyone I've known, it's 3 with the last name Campbell. Their nickname is Soup.
you know 3 people with the nickname Soup.
Yeah. Well, so I'm like friends with these people, but like when I was doing sports journalism, it seemed like every kid that was last named Campbell, like they would always just from the sidelines yell Soup. And I'm like, is this every Campbell's nickname? You know?
I've known a couple Campbells and that was not their nickname.
You got to introduce it. You got to keep this trend going. You just got to reach out to them and be like, yo, what's up, Soup?
I think they probably have heard it so many times, they'd just be like, please don't.
Right?
Yeah, don't. That would be
I
bad.
finally overcome this because there's this one guy who called everybody Soup because their last name was Campbell, David.
Start calling them Pacific. No, there's a lot more out there with all these acquisitions. Okay, our next most popular story. Stanley Black & Decker faces $222,000 in fines after a maintenance worker was severely injured. A 29-year-old maintenance electrician suffered severe burns during an electrical arc flash at an MTD Products facility in Willard, Ohio. The electrician was replacing fuses while fixing an industrial oven. An OSHA investigation found that the company, operating as Stanley Black & Decker, could have prevented the injury if safety standards were followed. Stanley Black & Decker acquired MTD, which makes outdoor power equipment for brands like Cub Cadet and Troy-Bilt, back in 2021 for about $1.6 billion. After the accident, MTD reported the worker's hospitalization, which triggered an OSHA inspection about 5 days before Christmas last year. Safety investigators found several safety issues, including failure to provide required personal protective equipment for employees working around energized electrical equipment. OSHA also said that Stanley Black & Decker lacked safe work practices and training for electrical maintenance employees and failed to provide required lockout-tagout procedures for energized electrical equipment. So, is this another potential problem with growing via acquisition? I mean, it's only been 3 years, 2 in a pandemic. Maybe there's still some legacy safety problems there, right, Jeff?
Potentially. I mean, you never know what the culture of these types of organizations and what they're dealing with. I tend to feel in manufacturing, there's such a time-sensitive dynamic to all of this. And you can see this was not a job when you're talking about replacing fuses in an oven. That's probably kind of on the lower end of a maintenance person's difficulty level, I guess you could say. This seems like a pretty straightforward process, but the line was down. We got to get it up. Let's go. And in the course of doing so, little things get overlooked. All the low-hanging fruit goes unpicked, so to speak. Because when you look at these arc flashes, it's incredible, number one, how dangerous they can be.
Oh, yeah.
You're talking about the ability, in some cases, they've registered more heat from one of these arc flashes than has been recorded on the surface of the sun.
Yeah, like 35,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
It's insane the amount of energy that can be generated here. And although a death is, I think, 2% of the time, that's still way too much. And these are still happening 5 to 10 times a day, according to a number of different safety outlets.
That's incredible.
So the fact that it's happening this frequently, thankfully, it wasn't as serious in this situation as it can be.
Yeah.
But I think, again, it does go back to the fact that we're in such a rush, that we're forgetting a lot of the little stuff. When you look at some of the faults, and this is courtesy of Fluke and their website, some of the most common causes of these faults are they're talking about just touching a probe to the wrong surface, loose or bad connections, gaps in insulation, improperly installed parts, or even just dirt. Corrosion, things of that nature that can cause some of these things. And you talked about lockout, tagout. How often do we talk about that in these safety situations?
Yeah.
Turn the damn thing off.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever I'm messing around with anything electrical, I'm down by the fuse bar or by the breaker shutting off the power.
Yeah, and not just there, but like on that entire half of the house. Like taking no chances.
Exactly. I got my light out, my safety light out and everything. So, but again, I've got the time to do that.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at the pressure in some of these operations, that's not always the case. And I think you can argue, is that a cultural thing? Is that an individual thing? where does the responsibility lie? The answer is probably both.
Yeah. Anna, I'm always surprised, a lot of times when we're in these shops or talking to people, and this is all anecdotally from my own personal perspective, it seems like people are either have kind of a very laissez-faire approach to safety. They're kind of that legacy. It's always worked for us and no one's ever gotten injured, so why rock the boat? And then there are the complete gold standards of safety. And again, that's just anecdotally. It's not a lot of times where I see people that are just like, we do a pretty good job with safety, And it's, I don't know, what's it going to take to get some of these laissez-faire operators to be like, okay, no, it's time to make the investments and just do things 100% about like gold standard.
Yeah, I know. It was, this story, like I was shocked when I read this. To me, it was amazing that one of the issues that they pointed out was that these workers were not issued the proper PPE. Like I know that Stanley is a big company, but Stanley is also a company that makes PPE.
Yeah.
Like
ship it from the other facility.
They produce, to me, there's just zero excuse for the fact that he didn't have it or he wasn't wearing it. Typically what I've seen from companies that sell safety products is that they are those gold standard companies because it's sort of baked into their culture. They talk about it all day long. These are the benefits. These are why you need these features. This is why our product is better, is because it addresses these boxes that you got to tick when it comes to safety and compliance. So to have a PPE lapse like that, I was just really surprised. Just because I would assume that they would also use quality tools because they're a tool company. You know what I mean? Like it makes sense that they would be doing that above board. So that was alarming. And I think it just illustrates, like we've seen it time and time again, but you don't know what's happening behind closed doors with these manufacturers. Just because a company has a big name and a big marketing budget, that doesn't always mean that they have their arms around these very basic production needs like worker safety. And I think it's really too bad because it adds to that black mark on the manufacturing industry because people see this and they think, I can't even work at a safety company and be safe, or I can't send my kid out to a safety company and they'll be safe. And to me, it just like, it doesn't help, it seems like an unforced error,
No, that's well put. Like, and it is particularly surprising. Do you take anything out of, it was an acquisition made in 2021, and that's kind of, they've had the company for 3 years, but 2 of those years are kind of like COVID years. So in my mind, sometimes when I look at it, it's like a roughly new, only 1-year-old acquisition that they've had a chance to maybe like get in there. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of why this could potentially happen.
Yeah, I don't think we need to make excuses for them. Like if this is truly a priority for your company, then
it's like day one.
Day one, you go in and you start, evaluating what it is that they're doing from a production standpoint and seeing what needs to change, implementing that training. That should be like your core strategic objectives when you complete an acquisition. I think for a lot of companies it is.
When they weren't starting from day one, MTD is a well-established large company.
Yeah.
They had things in place before, so this shouldn't have been an issue.
All right. Well, our most popular story this week. Hershey sued over deceptive carvings on Reese's products. The Hershey company is facing a federal class action lawsuit because at least 4 customers felt duped by specialty Reese's product packaging. For example, a new product designed as a tie-in in the upcoming Summer Olympics in Paris, it depicts a chocolate-shaped medal with a simple carving of a circle for the medal and a V shape to represent the ribbon. But when the wrapper is opened, the actual products are blanks, according to the lawsuit, with no such carvings on the actual products. The 4 customers, all based in Florida, have sued the chocolate maker for misleading customers. The lawsuit says, quote, Hershey's deceptive advertising is causing many consumers to purchase the products because of the cool and beautiful carved out designs on the product's packaging, when they would not have purchased the products if they were truthfully advertised. They're not just going after Reese's medals, but they also listed the peanut butter pumpkin, white ghost, bats, snowmen, stockings, bells, and footballs. Now, these footballs caused further problems because, according to the photos in the lawsuit, the football, quote, looks like eggs. My God. They called it a football, and it's really just an Easter egg in there. The lawsuit says the company boosted packing details within the last 2 or 3 years to goose sales and revenue. If this goes further, Anna, it could be quite costly because the lawsuit mentions just sales in Florida for the last 3 years, and that's $5 million. But maybe, hopefully, it doesn't go that far. I mean, I understand that there's got to be truth in packaging, right? But I think a little bit of the bluster around this one maybe took a little bit of the wind out of their sails for me.
You don't like the bluster? I like how we're calling these carvings as if they're like hieroglyphics or something, not like stitching on a peanut butter football.
Look at this beautiful carving. How did they make this stitching? And then they open the wrapper and they're like, oh my God, it's just an Easter egg. How dare they? I need $5 million.
I need ornate candy for $1.09 when I buy it.
Unless it has like very ornate eyes on this bat, I cannot smash it into my face.
Right.
Okay. Every once in a while, a story reaches us on the podcast, and I know for like 100% fact that Jeff is going to disagree with what I have to say, and I'm going to just throw that out there now.
Okay.
Bear with me here because I'm taking this really from more of a theoretical standpoint. This follows a few other suits that we have seen in the past that have targeted food companies because of product packaging. We covered one that was a lawsuit against the Barilla pasta company a couple years back, claimed that the company couldn't call itself Italy's #1 pasta because it indicated that it was made there, which it wasn't. And they say it commanded a higher price because of it. It said that on the box, Italy's #1 pasta.
Lies.
It was a lie. Another one was the Toblerone, which had to remove depictions of the Matterhorn from its packaging because it stopped production in Switzerland and moved it to Slovakia. And that was based on a law in Switzerland, by the way.
Okay.
Taco Bell was recently sued for false advertising based on the images it promotes of its food that look nothing like the end products. I think we can all agree that that's true.
Yeah.
Are these lame? Yes, of course they are. But I do feel as if corporations need to expect some of this type of pushback from consumers because I see it as being a path towards truthful packaging. And in the US has laws around this, right? Because it's a consumer right to know what's inside the box. You can't return a Reese's peanut butter cup after you open it because you don't like the way it looks, So besides trying to influence the company via bad press or negative social media attention, as distasteful as this lawsuit is, it might be the only recourse that anybody has as a consumer, And I think because the alternative is food packaging can say and show anything that they want, and you get whatever it is that you get when you open it up, and it could be completely different. So obviously the burden of proof is on them to prove that this is different enough from what they think that they bought. But I don't think we want to live in the world where the package can just be whatever. And then when we open it, it can be something else, and that's fine. So, maybe this is a waste of resources for food companies. I know that it is. However, I think it's an expensive lesson, honestly, in being straightforward. And it's a little bit of a dramatic example of that. Yeah. And I can see Jeff trying really hard not to roll his eyes.
I can hear him rolling.
I'm not filing the lawsuit, but I do think that, if people have the right to do so and they can prove that what they got is not what's depicted and what they thought they were paying for, then I guess they have the right to do that.
But isn't there a difference between there not being carved laces on a chocolate football and like a Big Mac just looking nothing like that when it comes through? I feel like there's a difference where it's just like you have this like smashed burger in a little box looking up compared to what they're advertising, which is like the glaze. What they put that like plastic glaze on it when they take the photo of it for the marketing. I don't know.
So you filed a lawsuit over a Big Mac, but you wouldn't over a Reese's peanut butter cup?
Well, so I wouldn't file it on either because I feel like I don't know if they should necessarily face these like punitive penalties because I feel like perhaps they might already have. Like when I have been victim to such practices, when I've bought the bat or the football, or the metal, and like you open it in like it's like 1 second where you're just like, oh, it's not on there, and then you eat it. Like it makes me think twice about whether or not I'm going to buy that product again. Honestly, It does. Like, so I feel
I agree, but
but I mean, is that enough for me to sue? No, it's just enough for me to like not buy it again.
agree. But do you think you have a right to know the first time,
I think that there's,
or that people have the right to know the first time?
like when it comes to, I think you do have a right to know. I think that to me, it's more important that you have the ingredients and more about how it's made and what it's made of. That's more important to me than what it looks like.
Not to these people in Florida.
Not to these people.
They want the jack-o'-lantern face.
Jeff, one of the biggest issues here is that, with the carvings, you do statistically have less chocolate to consume. So really, they're lucky for having uncarved chocolates. It's a bonus.
Case closed.
Done. Put us on the jury.
This is so silly. Here's where my brain went, I guess, when reading this story and everybody getting outraged over these candy carvings and everything else. When it comes to a food product, here's the expectations. I want it to taste good.
Yeah.
I want it to be, unadulterated in any way, shape, or form. Okay?
Don't want it to make you sick.
There shouldn't be metal shavings or anything like that in my candy bar. Those are your expectations. You can go a step further and you can say it should be packaged in a way that doesn't destroy the product. Okay, so it's preserved. It should be delivered in a way that keeps costs down, so I don't have to pay a ton for this particular piece of candy. All of those are reasonable expectations. And if you go a step further, you can say, you know what? I want this produced in a safe facility. I don't want to hear about my candy bar coming from a place that suffers from OSHA regulations or fines. I also want to make sure that the people producing this candy are paid well and that they can support their families doing so. So these are all the expectations that we have a right to assume from any manufacturer of any product. And you're going to tell me their priority needs to be to make sure that there is a smiley face on my Ghost peanut butter cup? No. This is ridiculous. I understand what you're saying, and there is a line, okay? There is a line in terms of false representation of your product. This is not it.
Yeah.
It told you it was going to be a peanut butter and chocolate shaped football egg Ghost championship medal, whatever you want to say. It is. If you don't feel it's artistic enough, that is your personal feeling on it. They still delivered in every way they said they would. I think this is a complete and ridiculous waste of time, and it takes resources away from manufacturers that they need to be putting in all of these other places.
Yeah. Well, let's continue to waste our time on it. What is the line for deceptive advertising?
I know it when I see it. I'll be honest. I mean, I don't.
No,
I mean,
that's true. I got you.
In this instance, again, what did they say it was going to be?
Yeah.
A piece of candy.
Yeah.
It's a piece of peanut butter covered in chocolate in this shape.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
that's what it was.
I think the ask is not to change the product; it's to change the packaging. So I don't think that that's outrageous. I think like asking for $5 million is. I mean, that is not like the true damages that you experienced as a consumer, right? But like, if that is the only recourse that a consumer has to make a statement on this,
it's not though. Don't buy it.
Yeah.
But do they have a right to get the right thing that's on the package the first time they buy it?
In my opinion, they did. They weren't paying $25 for a special edition candy bar. They were still paying the same price for the exact same thing.
Well, what if the wrapper just in fine print said like chocolate does not actually have face? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it does.
Okay.
I mean, that's all they need to do.
Because I agree with you. Like, I think there should be an expectation. I think people should be held accountable, but I also think that there should be some common sense. Like the scale of the outrage with some of this stuff is ridiculous.
But to be honest, like I don't think that there is large scale outrage. I think there's more outrage on the other end of people being like, this is a bit much in terms of a response. I don't think that you're getting a lot of people that are like, yeah, like let's waste a bunch of our time taking this to court. I mean, none of us are doing that.
Yeah,
this is four people. This is 4 people in Florida, man. Like, okay.
Well, no, it's a class action lawsuit, so it's like they're like it could affect hundreds because anyone can join the lawsuit.
Right, and, right. If this doesn't get dismissed before it gets there, but
Doug says it's good to see you, Doug. He says let people complain on TikTok and keep it out of the courts.
Well said.
I sort of agree. And I do think it could be as simple and unfortunate where you see it on every wrapper, like the jelly bean's not actually this big.
Right.
You know, like just that little caveat. And I just, when I go to YouTube and I see YouTube comments that in the millions and people proclaiming that their Halloween candy lied to them, I just kind of feel sorry for them. Like, and not in a small way, like in a man, just when you need to prioritize your life in terms of what is important.
And what you're going to put energy into, I guess.
Doug says, Jeff, when are you running for Congress?
Oh, Doug. After I tell you my fishing story, you may not see me as the same quality of candidate.
Let's burn through in case you missed it to get to that final
Move
thought.
ahead.
Before we jump into in case you missed it, though, we have another word from our sponsor, Weavix.
Hey, Sean, can you swing by my office after your shift, please?
10-4, copy that.
And we're back. Just remember that Weavix is the leader in frontline communication, offering push-to-talk multimedia capabilities and AI-powered language translation that empowers the frontline through a Walt Smart Radio. Now Weavix is the first to introduce safety-compliant music, breaking the monotony of everyday work. Always ensure that you have the ear of the worker while enhancing worker safety and connectivity. Explore how Weavix is transforming frontline operations at Weavix.com. Let's move on to In Case You Missed It. The stories, maybe not as popular on the website, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Jeff, what do you have for us this week?
So I picked a story about Ford teasing an electric Supertruck that's going to attempt to scale Pikes Peak. So basically, if you're not familiar with Pikes Peak, it's a challenge. It's the 102nd year, I guess, that they've done this uphill challenge, this race. It's pretty cool to watch, actually. It's a course that starts at approximately 9,000 something square feet and goes up to 14,000 square feet.
Okay.
So the air is already very thin. It puts a ton of stress on the vehicles as well as the drivers. It's a 12.5-mile course with 156 turns.
Whoa.
So very demanding course. And it's cool because there's a lot of different people take different types of vehicles out there. There's a ton of different classes. So Ford is taking the F-150 out there. And I thought it was cool because what they're going to do is they're going to be ratcheting up the vehicle's aerodynamics and power output to take on this course. And running the electric test vehicles there allows Ford to push the boundaries of EV powertrains in the most, what they call extreme conditions, and learn and bring those learnings back to enhance its production vehicles. So I just saw this and we've talked a lot about the F-150 Lightning. We've talked about, they probably produced a little too many. Demand has dropped off. People aren't sure about the ruggedability and the durability of this vehicle as a work truck. I think what a great way to, number one, get some awesome R&D, as well as get some tremendous promotions out of this vehicle. Ford has taken vehicles there in the past. Last year, they actually set a record with they did some sort of hyper-customized like super van. Basically, they took up there and they set a course record. Okay. And just so you know, the course records, depending on the vehicle type, were ranging from anywhere from like 8 to 13 minutes. Okay. To do this course, this incredible 12.5 mile course. So, again, this one just caught my eye because I just think it's super smart and such a great way to promote their vehicle, but also test it at the same time and really convince people like me who are in sort of that late or early or late majority type status when it comes to new product development to maybe get on board with this a little bit more, and not just this particular vehicle specifically, but showcasing what electric vehicles can do. We know that they're great from an acceleration perspective. There's always been a lot of question from a true power perspective. Yeah. The other thing that's kind of cool about this is one of the things they talk about with this course, because the air thins out. And if you know anything about an internal combustion engine, needs fuel, needs pressure, needs fuel, needs spark, needs air. Mm-hmm. With the air being so thin, it actually reduces power from a lot of internal combustion engines by as much as 30%. Okay. So it loses power as it goes higher, whereas in theory, an electric vehicle shouldn't have that same issue. So it should be cool to see how it performs. It should be cool to see how Ford embraces this. And again, what a great marketing vehicle to use.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a cool story and just showcases again going forward how we can get people excited about EVs by demonstrating what they're capable of in these kind of extreme situations.
Is it a little risky? You know, like, is this one of those things where, like, if you're not 100% sure about it, maybe being like a game time scratch isn't a bad idea?
Well, I think number one, it goes to the driver. And you really have to have somebody who knows how to handle this 156 turns in a matter of like
12 and a half miles, 10
minutes.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, that is some intense driving. So you have to have the right guy, right individual, I should say, behind the wheel. And they're also, this isn't going to be like, off the showroom floor type of model.
Yeah. So
there'll be some customizations there, but still with that electric drivetrain. See how it performs against the gas counterparts is pretty cool.
You could register as media, man.
I might. I've watched it on TV a ton. It's cool to watch.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
I've never seen it before. I want to check it out. And Margaret says hi, and she waved. So hi, Margaret. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Anna, what happens if this Supertruck makes it like 50 out of 156 turns and then it's just done? I understand there's a lot of engineering going into it. You should be fine. It should be fine. But is Ford taking a chance here?
Why do you think it wouldn't make it up the hill?
Oh, for any number of reasons. Like
compared to anything else?
Yeah. Ever since we saw a truck get pushed down the hill for promo videos, I'm always, I'm a little bit skeptical as to what's going to actually happen during sort of like these marketing stunts. Or ever since, Musk was showing us the like bulletproof glass.
Okay, but those were like in development prototype vehicles. This is a vehicle that actually exists. Mm-hmm. I don't have any doubt that Ford knows what they're doing with EVs. Their EV sales were up 86% in Q1. They have a lot of stuff that they're working on. I think that they could, as Jeff said, really, show off some of their chops here by doing some of these tougher courses and showing like what these can really do.
When is this race? Is this something that we can like?
I believe it is. Is it June or July 2nd?
Is it like during the day? Is this something where we're like, nope, we got to put everything down and watch this as a group?
International hill climb.
Doug wants to know how much they have regenerative braking on the way back down. That's one thing that I gotta say. Like, remember when regenerative braking first came out, and it was like almost a joke because it was like how little it actually contributed. But now it's like significant power savings. Mm-hmm. No, I thought this is a really cool story too. And no, the only reason I throw out the skepticism there is I have no doubt in the abilities of Ford. I hope that it makes it and is a great shining example of what the future is for electric super trucks. But with any PR stunt, there's a fair amount of risk.
June 23rd.
Okay. I actually think I'll be up at the cottage so I can watch it on one of the 4 channels we get up there.
I'm sure one of your brothers has seen this before.
All right. I'll do my in case you missed it next. I chose worker rights violations at huge VW plant in Mexico. So on April 25th, 2024, 10 workers fired from Volkswagen's assembly plant in Puebla, Mexico, filed a petition alleging worker rights violations. The petition said the workers were fired in retaliation for union activity they conducted while serving as union reps. The plant is the largest, longest operating auto factory in the country. The Volkswagen Mexico plant has 6,100 assembly line workers, 5,000 supervisors, and thousands of assembly workers. The factory makes 2,300 vehicles per day. In 2023, the company exported more than 300,000 vehicles. About 67% of those went to the U.S. Well, these former employees say VW Mexico violated their freedom of association and collective bargaining rights at the plant. This week, the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or the USMCA, Interagency Labor Committee for Monitoring and Enforcement, asked the Mexican government to review the committee's findings, which show that the workers' rights were denied. Thea Lee, Deputy Undersecretary for the International Affairs at the U.S. Labor Department, said, quote, "We are deeply concerned by the alleged violations of freedom of association. Retaliating against workers for their union activities violates the workers' basic and fundamental rights that the USMCA protects. Mexico has 10 days to decide whether to conduct a review and 45 days to investigate the claims and present the findings. Now, I chose this story just because we talk a lot about nearshoring and a lot of that production going to Mexico. The Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas says the Mexican economy is betting on nearshoring. Global manufacturers, specifically or particularly from China, are betting on Mexico's low labor costs. Mexico's government has increased the federal minimum wage 88% in real terms over the past 5 years. Labor costs are rising faster than labor productivity, which can impede hiring and lower the competitiveness of domestic and international firms in Mexico. And the situation can also drive up hiring in the informal sector, which let's just say is a little less compliant with some of these regulations. I picked this story just because I find it fascinating that we're trying to really push the unionization and organization and a little bit more of worker rights in Mexico. And I'm kind of intrigued to see how that's going to play out in terms of nearshoring and Mexico's role in manufacturing's future. Jeff, I don't know if you had a chance to check out this story, but I thought this had particularly large implications for the industry going forward.
Oh, I agree 100%, especially when you look, it's interesting to see how, it will be interesting to see how Mexico as a country sort of responds to this, because they don't want to put this type of information out. They don't want to know that there's union talk and that there's then allegations and basically retaliation. Retaliation's the wrong word, but the workers basically aren't just taking it.
Yeah.
They're fighting back a little bit and trying to defend their own rights, because when people look to Mexico or someplace else, they're going there to avoid these types of situations. So it is interesting to see at a government level, at a higher level, that there is involvement and this wasn't just sort of made to go away or swept under the rug. Yeah. So I think that shows a lot of evolution in just the manufacturing infrastructure of Mexico and how it is developing and how they see that there's an opportunity here. The reality is the labor costs are still much lower. So they should embrace the opportunity to make their facilities better, to give themselves a higher caliber workforce, because they still have a huge competitive advantage.
Right.
So if they can still bring in a high quality workplace with great workers and keep those rates down, which would be a norm, that isn't really what's at stake here. I think it really even elevates them potentially to more incoming manufacturing.
Okay.
It's interesting that there is a U.S. contingent that's involved here as well. And you can see that they're definitely saying, yeah, you need to make sure this gets all straightened out because, well, it makes U.S. look better too.
Well, the U.S. looks better, and they, they threaten some tariff and other financial penalties kind of that are on hold right now, but they're kind of, like, hey, it's your decision to make in 10 days as long as you make the right decision.
Right.
Anna, what were your thoughts on what's happening at VW in Mexico?
I think that it's pretty easy for this agency to say, like, hey, you need to look at this again and honor the rights these workers have to discuss these things. I don't think that they're saying, like, you have to organize them or you have to acknowledge their union. I mean, none of that has taken place, and maybe it's not even really at risk of being taking place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe this is an easy way for them to look good by saying that they support the workers' rights to do that, but they're not worried that those workers are going to actually assemble in the end. Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to know more about it, I guess, but I agree that it does make the prospect of manufacturing in Mexico and importing those products to the U.S. Better when you consider that the workers are being treated fairly. And I think that that's a good look for everyone. And so they need to promote that.
Well, and they were, these were members of an actual leadership committee of the Independent Union of Workers of the Automotive, Similar and Related Industries, Volkswagen of Mexico. So, but you're right.
There's not an acronym for that?
Oh man, I don't know.
Don't try.
Hopefully
don't
it's super long.
You're more of a numbers guy, David.
Well, yeah, I am more of a numbers guy, so the words are typically troubling. Well, and then that's just the English translation of that. Anna, what's your In Case You Missed It this week?
I selected a story about a crash test dummy factory that's celebrating its 30th anniversary.
I'm glad you chose this. This is a great story.
Yeah. The company is called Humanetics, and they manufacture those anthropomorphic test devices, or ATDs, which are more commonly known as crash test dummies, and they are celebrating 30 years in Erie County, Ohio. So they have a 45,000 square foot facility. It was the first of its kind, designed specifically for manufacturing crash test dummies. It features, they say, a state-of-the-art machining center, advanced vinyl and rubber molding systems, and a centrally located dummy certification lab spanning 4,500 square feet. The facility's advanced environmental controls, they say, ensure the production of consistent, high-quality components, setting a new standard in the industry. So it was cool because they reportedly, in celebration of their 15-year presence in Huron specifically, the company put up a billboard on Route 2. And the president and CEO, Christopher O'Connor, said, quote, "We wanted to remind the Huron community that the safety design of every vehicle in the world has been tested with a crash test dummy that originates in Huron. Millions of lives have been saved by these devices, meticulously manufactured here in Huron." And he said it's not hard to be proud of that. And I enjoyed the story because I think it's a great example of a company with a product that almost none of us will ever see in our lifetimes in real life. But it creates awareness, I think, and interest in the role that it plays in safety testing. And there are ways to do that. We've all seen companies that have very compelling stories that they never bother to get the word out on those stories because from a consumer standpoint, that's not their buyer.
Yeah.
But in cases like these, I think it serves as a boost to the industry or these products that would otherwise fly under the radar. It encourages communities kind of take pride in the companies in their regions, to understand them, view them as productive drivers of the economy with interesting stories to tell. And I think that helps with acceptance. And I think it helps with companies as they recruit as well, because there's so many, I think, nameless, faceless manufacturers out there where you never buy their products. You don't know what they do. You never need to know. It just isn't there.
Yeah, but they also have 200, 300, 400 workers in your community.
Right. And maybe they're making this widget that's being used in the space program and nobody knows that. But like if, to get your story out there and remind your community, hey, this is why we're here. This is what we're doing. And actually really important. Mm-hmm. I just thought it was a cool way to celebrate their anniversary buying this billboard. And it's just such a unique application. So I enjoyed the story.
Well, I also think it does a really good job. We hear that a lot from Gen Z in terms of, wanting to know that what they're doing is having a contribution to the world. I think that more of these stories need to be told. Man, I also wonder if Humanetics had a piece of all that. Remember when like the crash test dummies had a moment in pop culture? Like there was a cartoon, there were all those commercials, there were action figures.
Oh yeah.
I had like crash test dummy action figures.
The talking ones in the commercials. I forgot about that.
They were fantastic because it was like, wait a second, this toy was designed to be broken? Fantastic. I want more of them. Also, there are a bunch of tiny ingestible parts, but whatever. Beside that, I want more of that. I think that the crash test dummies need to have a resurgence like Geico tried to bring the caveman back,
I loved the caveman.
It's time for another moment. Even the show?
Oh, no. No.
The show was like, oh, yeah, that's right. This is great at 90 seconds.
Yeah, like even 60 is fine. But yeah, no show.
Jeff, your thoughts on the 30th anniversary of the Crash Test Dummy Factory?
Yeah, very cool. And actually, interestingly enough, this is not far from where I was fishing.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
So, I think it's cool too, because this is one of those product types that you could see almost becoming commoditized. Mm-hmm. And this company Humanetics must have done a really good job in terms of quality control and the way that they position themselves in the market and probably evolving their product and investing in it to be in business for 30 years. Because I think on the surface, somebody could say, look at these dummies and go, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
For cheaper, yeah.
But they were obviously doing a lot of things right and continue to do so. Yeah, great story.
Also, incredible product variety. Like I thought there's like one crash test dummy, there's a big one, a small one, and a baby one, and then you look at how many there are out there. It's like, oh, wow. All right. One for everybody.
Is there a dog?
Is there
curious. There's like a picture of the whole family.
Oh, I don't see a dog dummy. I mean, it has to exist though.
Probably.
I mean, they just put that in the back of the car and they're like, still not good for the dog. Yeah. Still really bad.
Still flies around back there.
All right. Well, turns into a projectile actually, extremely dangerous. Well, before we get out of here this week, let's do our final thoughts. Anna, do you want to start with final thoughts?
Sure. I just wanted to say that it's the last week of school for my kids next week. And every day there is something I need to leave work to go do. But it's been fun. I know. So I've got I had a concert this week and then some field trips lately. And then tomorrow my kindergartners have their kindergarten party, which is going to be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just trying to enjoy every minute of the last few days of school and know that by the time they're ready to go back, I will be ready for them to go back.
Is there a kindergarten graduation?
Not for us, no, which is actually really good for me because I cannot emotionally handle that stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like sit there and watch them put on caps and gowns.
No, I mean, we went to an orientation for a camp that our kindergartner is going to go to. And like, even that was like a little bit of another overwhelming. I'm like, just like, oh, wow, he's moving on to this next phase.
Yeah.
And, they grow up real fast. My final thought this week is, so we had a 22-year-old, quote, big fan of the Today in Manufacturing podcast reach out. He's going into his senior year. He's majoring in manufacturing, engineering, technology. And he found manufacturing about 4 years ago after high school when working in a factory. And he says that he fell in love pretty quickly. I wanted to use this as my final thought. Totally scrapped my other final thought because this came in and I just thought it was really cool. Well, so a couple of weeks ago, I asked about if it was still cool to work for Tesla. I wanted to know if Gen Z was drawn to work for Tesla. So this student reached out because he says he has no desire to work for Tesla, nor do any of his classmates. And I was just like, go on. So they don't want to work for Tesla or any company like it because it would be too much stress for too little pay. And a lot of students would prefer to work somewhere that is a little boring, but stable with lots of time off. And I thought that was interesting and incredible because, man, if you can find a place that is stable, a little boring with time off, I think you're going to find a nice home in manufacturing.
Yeah.
And so he also asked his friends in the automotive engineering program. And not only do they not want to work for Tesla, but they kind of are not cool or they've cooled on EVs altogether. Most of them hope to go into performance racing, and all of them are more interested in developing the combustion engine further instead of making more EVs. I mean, I thought this was just really incredible feedback. He also stresses that this is not the case for his friends in the foreign exchange program. He says that they will give just about anything to work for a company owned by Elon Musk.
Interesting.
So I just wanted to call that comment out. Really thank this person for reaching out and sharing his experience with the podcast, because a lot of times, we don't get that sort of insight into it, where it's just like kind of you ask a question and you move on and we talk about it amongst ourselves. And it's really cool when somebody who is going to be in manufacturing, engineering, technology, just be like, yeah, no. And we've seen, I've seen this more and more. This new generation is more about quality of life.
Yeah.
And just not willing to make some of the sacrifices that previous generations were, which is great. And we got to break this whole mentality that I get sometimes where it's just like, well, that's how we've always done it. We're American and we work hard and we put in the hours and we get on salary. So that way we don't even think about how much we're working. I don't know. I thank you very much for the feedback. I really do appreciate it. Anna, what's your take on hearing about the possibly Gen Z cooling on Tesla?
I mean, that does not surprise me.
Yeah.
I am also on board with a little bit boring but stable and a lot of time off. I think that's a great, great approach to your career.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be a little bit less stress. It's a better quality of life
For sure.
Jeff, do you get the same thing when you hear an emphasis on better quality of life? And is there that initial pull on you from the legacy our parents and grandparents just work into the bone?
No, I think when I hear that, I think I thought the same thing when I was 22, 25, getting out of school. I think that is where your focus is, because you've seen, maybe I don't want to say everybody, but in my case, I saw how hard my dad worked. I can still remember him coming home. He'd sit on the second step and he'd take off his work boots. And every day when I saw him, I could just see, I don't want to say defeated, but just tired,
exhaustion,
tired. And I wanted to try to avoid that, that type of dynamic. And I think that's what leads people to think about, well, I want to come home. I want to be happy. I want to enjoy what I do. I don't need to be going 1,000 miles an hour. what happens once you get into the workforce, and if you are fortunate, and I was fortunate to find something I really love doing, you do begin to push yourself more because you do want to try to elevate and be more heavily involved in that company or that product that you're producing or whatever the case may be. So I'd love to talk to him in about 10 years. Well, and see if those attitudes maybe have morphed a little bit, because I think that's a natural evolution of people's perspective. But
I'll set a calendar invite. Podcast 10 years from now. Follow up with the listener. But yeah, again, thank you again for sending the feedback. And hey, send me your address and we'll send you all kinds of Today in Manufacturing swag. Jeff, what is this fishing story?
Before we get to that.
All right.
Sorry. I was telling Anna, I had a little bit of a moment this morning. I was getting ready for work and I sat down on this bench and I had to move my daughter's backpack.
Okay.
And I always have to move her backpack whenever I get ready to put my shoes on and go to work. And it hit me. She's graduating on Saturday. This is the last time.
The last time you're moving the backpack.
That I will ever have to do that. She is graduating. She's my youngest daughter, graduating from high school Saturday. Extremely proud of her. She had some stuff that she had to deal with when she was in junior high. That was not easy. And she's just been awesome. She's become a fantastic person and very, very proud of her. And I know she's not listening, but I love you very much, Helga. Good work. The other story that everybody's been waiting for, the fishing story.
Yeah.
Okay. So before I say this, I do want to put on record the fact that I caught 30 walleye that were average between 20 and 22 inches. So very successful trip, wonderful time on Lake Erie. But I was the new guy in the boat. Like, I hadn't done this type of fishing in quite a long time. A lot of trolling. And one of the first things, we brought in a fish in the net, and I'm reaching down, and you always make sure the hook is out of the fish before you reach into the net. Mm-hmm. Well, what I forgot is that the type of hook we were using, or the lure we were using, has 3 hooks on it, dangling down vertically. Mm-hmm. So I saw one and just thought, I'm good. Grabbed the fish. The fish does what fish do, flopping around, and one of those hooks.
Oh, no.
Buried in the upper palm of my hand.
Like first day?
First day.
Oh, man.
Yeah. In the morning.
Just like, this was a good choice.
And I had about 6 beers, so the blood was actually a little bit thinner and flowing pretty good.
You said it was the morning, correct? Okay.
It was just 5 morning beers.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there with my hand like this, and I'm like, I go to my buddy. I'm like, do I just take this out? He's like, oh, no. No. So he tried to get out some thread and try to get it, like the skin over the barb, because that's obviously the worst part of this. But we did eventually get that out after covering my hand in red. And once it was like, getting it out hurt a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But once I got it out, it was just like nothing. Like, it didn't feel bad. Like, it was okay. It was just an embarrassing story. So when we got back to fish camp, everybody's asking, how'd you do? And one of the guys in the boat said, yeah, we caught a 260 pounder. That being me. So great trip. A little bit of a rough start.
No crazy scarring. You all right?
No, it felt, as soon as the hook was out, it felt fine.
But man,
that was those 6 beers.
Yeah,
they didn't hurt.
Well,
neither did the 6 after.
I was just gonna say, like, well, I had like 6 while we were trying to get it out. You know,
I did send Eric a couple of pictures, so I was hoping he would throw those up. I even got one with the logo in there. So,
well, like, when you bleed on a boat, because it's not only like the beers necessarily, but like everything's wet, and so it just spreads, and you're just
it wasn't a geyser.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't that, but it was enough. But like I said,
all right.
Well, I was kicking the side of the boat. I was standing between, like where the steering wheel is and like where the other seat is. And man, I was just kicking until I could get that thing out. It did hurt. I felt stupid.
I give you credit for having the patience. Well, for having the patience for when your buddy said, like, calm down. We got to do this the right.
It's like, grab a beer. I'll be with you in a minute.
No, see, like, that's where I'm just like, we got to do it now, and just like rip it and then deal with like the full gash in the hand.
No, to his credit, he had a strategy trying to use the line to get it over, and he ended up just pulling it.
He's familiar.
Yeah,
it's not his first rodeo. No, well, it's good to have you back.
Much safer here.
Didn't lose a finger or anything.
Yeah, like just at the desk. There's no risk.
Yeah, just like it collapses immediately. All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily or weekly newsletters. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. You can also subscribe on YouTube at IN Magazine, so you can join us, Doug and Margaret, and all of us on the live event and then in the live chat every Thursday around 2. All right, for Jeff Renke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we'll see you next week.